harder, faster. Boom, I'm going to the maximum. I'm going to the maximum.
All right, good morning, everybody. How are you doing? Woo! For a small room, we're quite loud. I like it. Yeah, even though it's morning. Who was partying yesterday?
Nobody was. All of these people that you can see here, these are the people that went back to their hotels and went to sleep, and they're not hungover.
Exactly. And they wanted to come in the morning to discuss about gaming. Is that right?
That's what they wanted to do.
Yes. So let's start with a quick introduction. So my name is Stefanos. I'm a content creator. I have been a gaming journalist in the past. And I was one of the first talking head edutainers in Greece back in 2015. Now, usually the panelist is doing the introduction, the moderator is doing the introduction of the panel, but I think this is boring. So how about you give us an introduction, Jason, and then Justin?
Sure. My name is Jason Brink. A lot of you guys know me as Bitbender. I have been in blockchain for a long-ass time and work in gaming. I am the president of blockchain at Gala, and yeah, we work on bringing Web3 entertainment to the world.
And also has amazing glasses. I really need to point that out. Thank you, Jason. Justin.
Hey, I'm Justin Manusing. I've been working in gaming for about 5 to 6 years now, mostly on product and content creation, and I help run Acadarena, basically a network of gaming communities in high schools and colleges across Latin America, Southeast Asia, and North America.
Thank you so much. Excellent. So today's panel, it's about gaming, and we were trying to figure out what's the best approach. Because who here is from day one? From day one, who is attending the event since day one? So most of you have already heard everything. We talked a lot about gaming, about the future of gaming, the quality of game. So today we want to approach it from 3 different perspectives. What is the future of gaming in the blockchain for the developers, for the gamers, for the industry, and the communities? Okay, so let's start with the question. I will start actually with you, Jason, because it's something that you said in the previous panel. You said that, yes, some of the games in the blockchain are not as fun because they are focusing more on the pay-to-earn aspect. So
that's a really, really nice way to put what I said, but I appreciate that.
But the question here is, how can this be a career for a game developer? There is a kid out there who wants to be a game developer, and we tell them that in the blockchain, games are not fun.
Well, you don't have to tell them that. I mean, one of the things that we work with a bunch of different developers around the world. We've got 28 AAA games in the pipeline right now. And one of the things that we have to do is when we first have, contact with a developer, we start talking about making a game, and they're like, Web3, oh, yeah, no, we don't make those. Because what they're thinking of when you think of a Web3 game is something that you might see circa 2005, some sort of, shit-looking Flash game or something like that. We make real games though, and that's one of the really important things. And developers, what you have to do is you have to show them that blockchain and tokens are part of a technology layer that can better enable them to make games and to serve their users in a way that creates profoundly positive impact for everybody. As well as opens up a bunch of different possibilities that otherwise they would not be able to access.
Mm-hmm. And what are your thoughts, Justin? How can a developer see their future in the blockchain, a game developer?
Well, we're not from a development background. We're more of a community builder. But as someone who worked in software development myself, I mean, at the end of the day, using the blockchain is a choice of technology. And at the end of the day, it's like, if you're a developer, you should be looking at the blockchain as a way for you to further develop like better products and not as an alternative form of, just like fundraising and such. So it's like right now, I actually think we're actually entering a not a golden age, but a better time when it comes to building on the blockchain because you're actually starting to see a lot of the noise disappear from the space in terms of aggressively fundraising and integrating blockchain just because. And now you're starting to see actual projects utilizing the blockchain and Web3 in ways that actually build, products that weren't possible in older forms. So I think that's pretty cool.
Can you analyze, you said something interesting, you said about fundraising. So do you believe that the people now who are jumping into the gaming industry to develop, they're doing it to raise funds?
I mean, last year, obviously, there were so many people trying to fundraise on the narrative that, hey, we're building a play-to-earn game, we're building a Web3 game, let's insert a governance token, or let's insert some sort of shoehorned mechanic so that we can fundraise millions of dollars on the blockchain narrative. But, I mean, if you're fundraising right now, and you're building a blockchain game, you're probably more likely than not to be a true believer because it's actually much harder to fundraise now with Web3 games.
Mm-hmm. And do you have actually any comments on that, Justin?
No, generally speaking, I agree with everything that he just said. I mean, what we saw last year was very much the game-based equivalent of like the 2016 ICO boom, where you have, someone who downloads Unreal, makes a 3-minute clip of somebody running through a forest and says, "Oh, we're making a game, give us money," and then that's it. And then they kind of disappear. It's like flash in the pan stuff, and they just fizzle out and go away. Or you have remarkably crappy games that are built, but they're remarkably crappy. And now we're getting to the point where a lot of this is being cleared out, and we'll start seeing more real development, which we look forward to.
So I would like to ask about where the big companies stand in this field. So companies like Blizzard, Naughty Dogs, you have all these massive companies. How can they benefit from the blockchain technology?
So when we work with large developers, and we have worked with a lot of large developers, they're very skeptical of blockchain. And the reason for that is because by and large, Web 2 development is based around the concept of developing ways to extract maximum funds from the users and give them as little as possible. So you might have a game and you might sell somebody a skin in that game, but you don't want them to be able to transfer it, because if they can send it to a friend, then that friend doesn't have to go buy it themselves. And so going into this, you have to create an entire shift of mindset that is really counter to what most Web 2 large companies are looking for. I mean, we've had really interesting conversations with large developers. One of the largest developers in the world, I'm not going to name names because I don't like being sued. One of the largest developers in the world, we had this very interesting conversation with, where we basically pitched the idea of NFT ownership and the fact that the assets live forever. And they're like, "Oh no, we don't want that. We don't want that, because if it's something that lives forever, we can't sunset the game and release the next one." And so, and then the idea that, oh, well, no, what you can do is you can take those and you give them utility in the next version, so you use it as a user acquisition play. They're like, "Oh, no, we don't like that at all. We want to make money again from them." And so it's very interesting to sort of see the way that developers approach this at the larger end of things.
Yeah, and kind of piggybacking off of that, it's like the other thing is that a lot of Web 2 games, and in general, it's like I don't think it's a stretch to say that adding a Web3 or real-world economy to a game is actually a lot of work for a lot of devs, and sometimes it's not even a matter of preference. Sometimes it's just a matter of the significant hurdle of integrating a open-ended economy compared to a closed-loop economy of a Web2 game. Because what ends up happening is that now you don't just have to build a good game, you also have to build a good economy. And I'm sure you guys at Gala Games know better than I do that making a game is already a lot of work. Making a good economy is a lot of work, and suddenly that just doubles the amount of work for you as a dev. So that's why there's also a lot of hesitation, not just from the whole ethical, moral, or even just the product standpoint, but just the workload standpoint. It's a lot of work to integrate a real-world economy into a game.
And I'm really interested with what you said. That reminds me the issue with lamps back on the day, where lamps were created in order to be damaged so they can sell more. And then certain regulations were needed to be passed that a lamb must have a certain lifespan in order to be available for sale. So are we facing something similar? Will we reach a point that because of the blockchain, all these companies will have to have some sort of an economy that allows the user to have ownership of what they win in game?
Well, I think that that's definitely part of it, but I think what it is beyond that is it's a fundamental shift in the way of thinking. You know, Web 2 thinking says that I own the game. As a company, it's my game, I do what I want. Web 3 thinking says that, okay, well, you know, I may build the game, I may put tons of money into the game, but at the end of the day, my goal is to decentralize that game. And so rather than having your sort of standard Web 2 development of, you know, create a game, launch a game, sunset a game, okay? You create a game, you launch a game, you find a way to monetize that game for a period of time, and then you decentralize that game. And you let the people who love it the most take care of it. And that's something that hasn't ever really been done before. But I think that it's something that we definitely want to do. We want to see happen because, you know, these communities that you build, right? There are people who are super, super, super passionate. And I can think back to when I was in, you know, my early 20s and things like that. Some of my favorite games that were sunset that if I could, I would totally be maintaining today. I would be running servers for them. I'd be, you know, doing all of these things, but you can't because the company's like, nope, we're flipping the switch off.
Yeah, and I mean, like, I agree with you, right? Like, Web3 provides a way for people who really love these games to continue building upon them. Because, like, but even then, even in Web2, there's already a lot, like, even though it's harder in Web2, there's a lot of communities that have, like, carried on development of their games ecosystems even long after their developers have sunsetted. Like, I think a great example of this is the Super Smash Bros. Melee community. It's like, that game released 2002, but even up to now, like almost 21 years later, suddenly you see people running events for this, you see people having thriving local scenes for this game, and even though Nintendo actually tries to kill the games community every step of the way, it just keeps growing every single year. So I think, like, if anything, I think one of the benefits of Web3 is actually allowing the community to take over the game or start taking ownership of aspects of the game without having, like, the developer try to, like, kill you at every step.
So how can we say to these companies that this is to their benefit? The Web3 development is to their benefit? Because what I hear now is that it's a very actual problem. The problem is that, hey, you build the game, you put all the money, and then it's not yours anymore. Then it belongs to the community. So how could they benefit?
I mean, from a community development standpoint, the reality is that the big players are never going to play along at the start. Like, that's just the reality of how things work when it comes to technology or mindset adoption. As you said, right, it's a mindset shift. So really the only way things are going to work out is if independent or Web3 native gaming companies like Gala, for example, or Sky Mavis actually, like, you know, end up popping off and proving to these bigger players that this is a model that works. Only then will the big players start playing along.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I mean, when a game development company, you know, game development is a business, okay? And this is a big challenge for us sometimes when it comes to the community management side of things, is because, you know, we are running a business. We have like 400 people that we have to pay. We have thousands of developers working for other companies developing games as third-party developers, you know, and so it's an actual business, right? Now, when you take a gigantic gaming company, what they do is they make revenue projections, right? And they say, okay, well, if we do this, we've done this before, you know, this is our 4th game in whatever installment. We know that this game should make this much money. It should take roughly this much time, you know, all of these things. And what you need to, that part of that mindset shift is to, instead of looking at it as revenue up front, okay, what you do is you look at it as almost like live service long tail revenue in an entirely different way, but it's lower revenue up front, which is something that scares them. You know, and the other big thing about this is that if you're a big game company, you're probably publicly listed, which means that you have investors to answer to. And this is actually a problem in the Web3 space too, because there are some of these Web3 companies who have taken tons of VC and PE money, and those VCs and PE people want their pound of flesh. And so you have to, it's going to take an entirely new type of company in the long run to make this work.
So it sounds like, to summarize what we said so far, that it's the change of mindset that we're talking about. Not only the developers, but also the investors, the gamers, they all need to stop seeing things the way they see them now in order for this to work. I would like to ask the audience a question. How many of you are playing Web3 games? I'm playing games on the blockchain right now. Anything, it can be anything. So we have, yeah, you can raise your hand. It's okay.
What are you guys playing? Shout it out. Nice. Spider Tanks is one of ours. That makes me happy. What about you? Yeah, I saw your hand go up. No? No? Okay.
No?
Changed his mind. Not playing Web3 games anymore.
So we don't have a lot of people playing games right now, and that brings me back to the community. I actually had with Ida, I had a chat yesterday, and she was telling me that, you know, your son, right? He's playing the games like League of Legends and everything, and not really interested in the games of blockchain. So let's go a little bit to the community. When there is this pay-to-earn model, people are interested and they come and they form a community. When there is a disturbance in this pay-to-earn, like we saw with Axie Infinity, for example, the community is a little bit diluted. So how can we make sure in this stage that we form a community and the community will stick around? And I'm going to use this as an example, and I will let you talk. Let's watch at Blizzard, let's watch at World of Warcraft. Every now and then there is an expansion which is not good. People complain, they buy the game, they play for 2 weeks, they complain, they leave. And after 2 years, they will come back for the new expansion because now it's better. So how can we make sure that we can do this with games on the blockchain?
Well, the problem here is that we have a gap of expectation versus implementation in the space. When you take games and you look at some of the early, you know, hyperinflationary models and things like that, like anyone can look at that and know that that's really not going to work. But the thing that the developer has a tendency to do is to, you know, again, take that sort of short-term expedient thing. Okay, you know, having a game like Axie, if you had 10,000 users, wouldn't be a problem. That would continue on for a long time. But because it exploded in popularity and suddenly had millions of users, you know, it became completely unsustainable and exploded like overnight. So the way that you solve this is that you have to do two things. One, you have to build a community that goes beyond like the speculative investment type. The second thing that you have to do is your focus here, and this is part of point one to a certain extent, is your focus has to become one of play and earn, not play to earn. If you're doing a game that is play to earn, that's fucking called a job, okay? And it's not fun. So play and earn is okay, it's an entirely different thing, and then you have to build a tight model around that. Which, again, from a user perspective, if you're like I just want a bazillion tokens, you know, that's not sustainable, and no game should do that, which is why we don't.
And what do you think, Justin? You are the master of creating communities, so.
I think the first thing that like people have to like separate is that like my hot take is that the Web3 definition of a community is actually not what a community is. It's like they're not your community, they're your liquidity. So it's like they're like a lot of these people like people seem to think that like people who are hodlers or people who are like speculating on your project are your community. They're not your community. The community are the people who are actively using your product on a day-to-day,
Yes.
week-to-week
What
basis.
he said.
And the people who are actually there for the utility and the actual usage of your product. So, a lot of people say, oh, we have 30,000 community members just because 30,000 people hold your token. You don't have 30,000 community members. Your actual community members are the people who have day 30 retention, people who actually engage with your product on social media. So that's the first part. It's like actually clearly separating people who are there to hodl, basically. Those are investors. Those are investors and customers, and community members. People are there who are there to play and live inside your game, live inside your economy. So that's the first step. The second step is actively acknowledging actions and ways to build your product so that the community continues to benefit from it.
I want everyone who is recording this to go take point one of his answer and clip that shit and put it on social media everywhere, because that's the biggest differentiating factor. That is so important that people understand. Okay, if you buy an NFT and you show up in Discord and you say "When Moon," you are not a community member. If you play a game and you get involved and you love to play that game and you strategize about that game and you cooperate with other people, that's what makes you a community member.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense, right? Because just because you have Activision stock or just because you have Ubisoft stock, right? That doesn't mean you're a Ubisoft community member. That means you're a Ubisoft stock shareholder. So it's similar with Web3 games. Just because you hold a Gala token or an Axie token doesn't mean you're a community member. So very different expectations, very different market groups. Neither one's better than the other. It's all about stakeholder management. But I think the biggest problem with Web3 community building right now is that a lot of companies seem to treat basically the equivalent of shareholders and their community members as the same thing, and that's not a sustainable mindset.
Do you think we need somebody to come into these companies and shift things around a little bit? How can we fix this approach?
I think for a lot of these companies, right, a lot of companies right now, at least the ones that didn't get wiped out by all the bullets that happened across this year, are actually doing a really good job. The fact that you're surviving in the bear market means that you're doing a good enough job. But in general, I think a lot of gaming companies who are building in Web3 should try to bring in legacy community builders, people who've done a great job in the past of fostering grassroots communities. For example, one of the reasons why Twitch grew really fast back in the day is because they built a really strong partnership management team of people who had strong experience in the niche communities that they were building. So the person handling fighting game partnerships was someone who was running fighting game tournaments for most of their life. People who were running the League of Legends partnerships for people who were League of Legends streamers. Likewise, right now in Web3, you're actually starting to see a lot of similar mindsets come up. There's this really cool Web3 gaming project. They're called Pirate Nation. The guy who runs all their community and marketing stuff is the guy who basically helped build the entire Super Smash Bros. Community from the ground up in the East Coast US for the past 10 years. So I think it's really just bringing on people who know how to bring people together and not people who are good at pumping tokens or driving economic value. It's you need both on your team, obviously, but you need but it's people seem to not value people who know how to bring people together.
Do you want to add anything on that, Jason?
No, that's perfect, man.
So to wrap up, I just have a final question. How many of you in the audience are playing mobile games? Any mobile game? Candy Crush Saga? I don't know, Farmville. All right. Okay, so how can we make these people here who are already on mobile games to be interested into trying a blockchain game? Right now, we are here. We cannot change the mindset of everyone, but what would be the first step? And let's close it with this one.
I think the first step is to show that there's parity in quality between Web 2 and Web 3 games, or there can be. In most cases there is not, but there definitely can be. We don't have mobile games for the most part that are live right now, but we do have a tremendous number of very, very high quality games that are made by the same team that makes the Web 2 games. Last Expedition, one of our games, is run by the same guys that made Halo Infinite and Call of Duty. I mean, they know how to make games. And showing that parity and quality, I think, is important, because we have to shift that definition from Web3 game equals shit to it's just a game.
Yeah, and I think the last thing is like I agree with that. I think the last thing is that people have to acknowledge and recognize that game development is something that takes time. It's like a good game takes 3 years. You know, like Final Fantasy like 15 took like 8 years to come out. So it's like if we're thinking about it, right? The true Web3 native games like started being in development like 2 years ago, maybe 3 years ago at most. And in general, it's like just an understanding that the space is still early and that the games will get better over time when you actually give the developers time rather than rushing games out on the market.
So to conclude, what we said is that a change of mindset is needed by everyone, not just the developers, but also the investors, also us as gamers, and it takes time. And I think we rushed a little bit too much with the whole boom trying to earn as much as possible. So it's a work in progress, and hopefully in the future we'll have the games that we are really happy to be part of as a community. Thank you so much, Justin. Thank you very much, Jason.
Thank you,
Thank
guys.
you all for attending.
You guys rock. Thank you.
Philippine Blockchain Week. See you next year.